This is TWiT.
Apple did put out its earnings, and it seemed like a kind of a mixed bag. But I think we have to go to the charts to really understand what happened.
Of course. Go to the charts.
Let's go to the charts.
Look, those charts don't make themselves. I work hard in the chart mines all day making those charts.
I don't know why you chose this as your thumbnail, Jason, but you're looking both of you are looking kind of, anticipatorially weird.
That's the algorithm. I was lazy and I didn't choose
you didn't do a thumbnail?
So
there you go.
Stream,
Jason and Dan Morin from
that's about
$6.
Right. That's the mood. That's your
like,
Apple results mood this quarter, which is like, Yeah, well, I mean, I think more than ever, this is a Rorschach test of how people want to view Apple. I do that thing
it sure
where
felt like that because some people said, they beat earnings, beat expectations. Oh, it was the worst quarter in 25 years. It was like I couldn't figure it out.
I'm amazed. So I watch CNBC like literally 30 minutes a quarter, and it's the 30 minutes before Apple results come out because I just am fascinated because so many people on financial networks and in financial journalism are kind of like they're either in the bag for Apple or they're in the bag against Apple. Like there's one or the other, and you can see that they're like, no matter what happens, one of them's going to say it's good news and one of them's going to say it's bad news. It's a pretty good gig. But the truth is, both of these things can be true. Revenue was down 8% year over year, which it doesn't happen very often that Apple's revenue goes down, but it was also Apple's second best revenue quarter of all time.
Yeah. So they had a really good quarter in 2022, and that's the problem. And so $117 billion in 3 months seems so bad compared to
$30 billion in profit. $30 billion in profit.
OMG.
Yeah.
Again, besting every quarter except the year over year.
Except for that. But what freaks people out is that, iPhone sales were down 8% and year over year revenue was down 5%. The truth is Apple said they faced, this is the word they said it 11 times in an hour on their phone call with analysts, the word headwinds. When you talk about the headwinds,
Tim Cook even said, I had the wind in my face.
The macro headwinds were just macro. So the headwinds, I mean, the best way to look at this is Apple is right on one level. Like iPhone sales look down, but they actually were flat. If you look at how many they sold, what was down was revenue in US dollars because of headwinds, which is their code word for foreign exchange. So basically,
if you're standing in China
and you're looking at Chinese currency and you look at how many you sold last year at this time and this year at this time for the holiday quarter, sales were up. But if you converted that number, which they probably didn't convert the actual currency, but if you converted that number last year to US dollars and converted it this year to US dollars, it looks down because the dollar got stronger. So, it's one of those things I don't want to poo-poo it because there is softening here. There's softening in services. There's softening in wearables. There's a bunch of places where this was not a record quarter, right? And if you're obsessed with growth like Wall Street is for lots of good reasons, you look at it and go, oh, it's a little soft. Are they not growing anymore? But I think if you take another step back without going off the cliff, you look at it and you say, it was tough because they had the foreign exchange stuff. They're also in year 2 of the Slack or year 3 of the Slack period for the iPhone because they only really massively update the iPhone every third year. And you can see that there's a cycle that happens over a 3-year period where that new iPhone is a hit. And then everything just kind of tails off and is flat. And then it comes back when they do a brand new iPhone. So I think, question one that my wife always asks me is Apple going to go out of business? My answer is no.
No.
They're doing okay. That $30 billion, you can take that to the bank or stuff it in the mattresses, whatever you want. And then individually, the iPhone being flat, they didn't have their factory that made the iPhone Pro for a large period of the quarter. So I actually think that it being flat in sales and down in currency, basically based on conversions, is the best possible scenario. I thought it would be way worse. And the iPad had literally its best quarter in 9 years. So there's upside too.
Yeah. What is it? Mark Twain said there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And when you look, so for instance, 2 different graphs about services revenue. You look at this graph and you go, wow, I guess services did really well. And then you look at this graph and I guess it wasn't that good a year. And it just shows you that it really depends on the prism through which you're looking.
Right. Yeah.
So let's not focus too much on raw numbers, and let's kind of try to give people really the high level top line information that makes a difference. For instance, when I see year over year Mac revenue change down 29%, I go, but there's it's not that.
There's well, the iPad and the Mac both, because the iPad looks great and the Mac looks terrible. And the truth is, when you're doing year over year quarter, part of the trick is you got to ask yourself what happened last year and what happened this year.
Right.
So the iPad, they didn't do an iPad update last year, and in fact, they had a factory shutdown, so they couldn't sell as many as demanded.
Yeah.
So it was a bad year last year, and this year they came out with the new 10th generation iPad, and they came out with the new M2 iPad Pro, and they could make as many as people wanted, and so of course they did well. On the Mac side, last year they came out with the MacBook Pro. That was the first Apple Silicon MacBook Pro, and they had it as many as they could sell, right? They could make them that fast. This year, they didn't release any Macs in that quarter at all. And so is it a surprise that Mac sales were down year over year? Right. No. Is that the whole story, and could there be some softness there? Yeah, absolutely. But you got to go past that, like the year over year, because the year over year often is what they always call it, the compare in the jargon of Wall Street. It could be a tough compare, it could be an easy compare, basically. And that's what happened with the Mac and the iPad. The Mac sales are not as bad as they look, and the iPad sales aren't as good as they look. Right. That's the truth of it.
So there are a couple of things to note. This is the end of their fiscal year. So you're going to see those year over year comparisons. Normally you just see quarter to quarter.
Yeah. But no, this is their first financial quarter. They actually start with the holiday quarter. So these are all just against the year ago quarter.
So they do this every time that year. You could tell how much I pay attention to this. So they do this every year. And the other problem,
because it's so seasonal, you can't compare it sequentially. You have to compare holiday quarters to holiday quarters.
Rolling averages kind of thing. The other thing is, unfortunately, in the American economy, public companies are held to a quarterly result that the market really rewards or punishes them for. Even though no business operates in a 3-month cycle, that's still something they have to report. And so we're looking at these 3 months, and they're not. I mean, honestly, that's not what's important to Apple. So when you're looking at these numbers, these are numbers for investors. These are numbers for the stock market. These are not numbers for us as users. It's hard to read these tea leaves and say, oh, Apple's struggling or doing well.
And then people will say, like, well, why does Apple play the game if they don't have to? I mean, why do they have to, do that? And a lot of companies look at opportunities to not report more than they have to. But the problem is if your stock, and Apple is able to bump that up a little bit because they do a lot of buybacks, they do a lot of dividends, they do things that keep investors happy, and that keeps the stock going up. And when we say, well, the investors don't matter, well, a large part of their investors are their employees.
Right.
You have to remember all those stock options.
It's compensation.
And so when your stock is sliding every year, employees start looking for, they're looking for the next thing. So you want them to constantly feel like they got in low and are going to go out high. And so it is more important.
That's because that's kind of contrary to a well-run business, except it's an important part of a well-run business that's public. It's why Steve Jobs did not want to go public for the longest time, right?
Yeah, and you're getting the employees though. You have to always remember you're getting them at somewhat of a discount. I mean, they're getting paid a lot of money, but they're getting at somewhat of a discount
even
over what the market rate because they're getting stock.
Yeah. Steve said, I don't want to go public. I don't want to have a stock because I don't want employees to be sitting there all day looking at their net worth. And I understand that, having at one point had some shares, and you do, it's not unusual to go down the halls in Silicon Valley and see people with little stock tickers on their screen.
Especially if it does something, if you see the news that, you dropped by 12%, that's something that hurts when you're, if you had a lot of stock,
But it's all paper, right? It's all paper.
It is.
So iPhone quarterly revenue went up as a percentage of total revenue. It was going down closer to half. It's now 56%. It's a big part of their revenue.
Holiday quarter, right? Like it's surprising how seasonal even the iPhone is, but it really is. There are a lot. It comes out in the fall, and then there's also holiday buying, and that's why it hurt them, I think, so much to have that thing that we talked about when they announced it. They warned that they weren't the factory that makes their most important segment of their most important product shut down, and they couldn't fulfill demand. And the mystery question is, of course, what happened to those people, right? Did they buy an iPhone, a cheaper iPhone? Did they wait, or did they go and buy a different phone? Or did they say, I'm just not going to upgrade this year? Because there's no way to really measure like lost sales. I think some of them will just roll into the next quarter, and Apple will benefit from that, but not all of them, right? And that's you always want to just sell it. If somebody wants to buy your product, you should have it ready to sell, and they didn't.
Or the next year, like a lot of times people make a decision now that Apple is in this kind of constant pattern of being able to have, that's this September. So if you look at it and you go, that wasn't that much different than my last phone or the phone that I have, like I don't see any new features, then you're oftentimes not waiting for a quarter. You're just waiting for the next year. You're like, I'm going to keep this phone. The smart people, I mean, like you either buy it, like make a decision, buy it in October, enjoy the glow of the year. And then, or you just wait until the next year unless you break it, or something like that.
That's why rumors of a iPhone Ultra coming out this year or next are so interesting, because you really have to provoke an iPhone user to upgrade at this point. You have to give them something that is so radically different from what's in their pocket right now that it really does push them to upgrade. It used to be that people were kind of on a 2-year or even a 3-year upgrade cycle. Now I'm seeing more and more people that look, so long as my phone is still working, so long as I haven't dropped into the toilet yet, I'm not going to replace this until it actually breaks. It's hard to advise people on. Do you have a working phone? Yes. Are you happy with it? Yes. Okay, then don't worry about upgrading right now.
Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. ACI Learning is proud to announce that its virtual lab solution, Practice Labs, has helped over 1 million learners. Ensure personnel have the opportunity to test before deploying new updates without compromising your live system. Visit acilearning.com and give your IT team superpowers with ACI training.